Hi guys, I'm Seth Marshall, and over the last few months I've been studying the Dungeons and Dragons subculture. I've spent time reviewing several different articles surrounding the game and interviewed both experienced and inexperienced players. Through my research, I've been able to find key aspects throughout the subculture. Among the most important to note are the characterization of the players, the concept of the Dungeon Master, the moral panic surrounding D&D, and the upcoming generation. I hope this provides you with an insight into the mystical world behind the game and the subculture formed around Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you guys for watching. Dungeons and Dragons was first created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in 1974 as the first true fantasy and role-playing game. The game has a medieval science fiction element based on players assuming the roles of imaginary characters in that time period. Various campaigns within the game have to do with warfare and educational simulations. Since its emergence, 5 editions of the game have been published, and millions have created characters and began their adventures in magical worlds of their own creation. Character creation is a huge part of the game. You can be a number of mystical creatures such as the elf, the paladin, or even a goblin. Also, you can live as a human in the game as well. Traits for these characters are determined by outcomes of dice rolls and amount to a character's strength, constitution, and dexterity, among other qualities. Often, those who play shape their characters similar to who they are in real life or give their characters qualities that the player would like to explore.
I am Colder the Witch Hunter, the 800-year-old immortal.
I'm DuPont, Dwarven Rogue, and if there's coin to be had, I'll be there.
A lot of times it's a reflection of themselves. I feel like it's two extremes. It's either the reflection of themselves or the complete opposite.
Okay.
There really isn't a middle ground. I would say for more than half of the people, it's a reflection of themselves. And a lot of the time, it's parts that they didn't know about themselves. They learn new things about them from their experiences through their characters. The more people who are exactly opposite of themselves, it's more that they're trying to be different and try something new.
Okay.
And that allows them to have, experiences they wouldn't normally go through.
Cool.
When I play, I've got a character who's he's a lot shyer than most people. He's definitely the person who I'm not. Definitely sticks to the shadows, not wanting to be seen, more or less than heard, and avoids conflict more than anything. And I think that's where the connection between me and that person comes in.
Okay. And what made you choose it? Just a change of scenery, or?
Well, it's a lot different to go from Dungeon Master to player character than from going to player character to Dungeon Master, because all of a sudden you have this whole persona of every character that you play, and all of a sudden you have to make everyone become one person.
Okay.
So it took a lot for me to decide what I was going to do with my character, and I eventually brought it back to something that I don't get to do a lot, and that's be more of the quiet person, more of the I'm planning what I'm doing by myself, and if it works for me, that's good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And while I care about my other players' characters, I can tell you my character doesn't.
The Dungeon Master is essentially the storyteller behind the game. He sets the stage and determines whether or not a dice roll is necessary in given situations for given actors. Many of his stories are based upon the Dungeon Master's Guide, a book assigned specifically for the DM of the game to aid in their storytelling and provide them with specific guidelines. They are seen as very powerful people to the dedicated player. The Dungeon Master cannot be challenged, and he can make life or death decisions regarding a player and the ultimate playout of the campaign. The DM essentially creates the story and builds off of the actions of the players.
The small village of Braunbog has recently come under a baneful curse. The young are born deformed and demonic. The denizens are driven to madness, some suicide. Those that remain, stubborn as they are, have fallen silent. But the nature of this curse has drawn the attention of one man.
A lot of times, the Dungeon Master gets seen as God.
Okay.
It is more that the dungeon master is the storyteller, and every person who they aren't playing. So they are their characters, and the dungeon master is everyone else in the world who they run into.
So, I'm sorry that just kind of stood out. You said they see the dungeon master as God.
A lot of times when people start playing, they see the dungeon master as a god-like figure, controlling the world. That happens a lot, but that's not really what it's meant to be. It's meant to be more of a storytelling aspect.
It takes a great amount of effort and experience as a player to become a dungeon master. Often, those who wish to become dungeon masters have DMs teach them the rope behind the role, and this process could take up to months or years. Once a dungeon master, you spend a great amount of time preparing various stories, characters, and events. Tom referenced the fact that for every hour of gameplay, he estimated up to 2 hours of preparation. Another huge element behind the game is the satanic panic. In the 1980s, people began associating the game with evil, darkness, and the devil. They believed that if you played a game involving dark powers like D&D, you could be unconsciously making deals with the devil and thus having the evil of the devil rub off onto you. This is important to note because around this period, murders and suicides began becoming associated with the game. People blame suicides on players having too strong of a connection with their character. Several murders became associated with Dungeons & Dragons due to the fact that they mirrored similar aspects of killing and plundering within the game. Outsiders began to feel that the so-called violent mindset behind the game made even pacifists become violent and obsessed with killing. It had also been noted that people chose their characters specifically based on the violent abilities behind it. It is because of this violent association that many anti-Dungeon & Dragon groups were formed, such as BAD, otherwise known as Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons. Schools also took action by banning the game completely, and Christian organizations stood against the game firmly due to its aspect of violence and satanic association. Today, millions play as either devoted players or someone merely interested in experiencing the creative elements the game has to offer. The satanic panic behind the game has died down greatly, and players sit in disbelief that people saw so much evil in the game that they love. The game people feared so greatly had been found to be very helpful in the everyday struggles of its players. One local dungeon master here in Oneana says that Dungeons & Dragons helped him through his struggles with bullies by taking his aggression out on the game and not resorting to real-life violence. He also stated that as a kid, learning to read the books associated with Dungeons & Dragons helped him overcome dyslexia, and his interest in the game helped fuel his love for creative writing. When asked about evil surrounding the game, he replied, "There is not a book telling you how to worship Satan. Yes, there are elements of devils and demons, but those are simply elements of a story. It is basically a story of heroes and suppressing demons, really. On evil characters, you can play an evil character. Tybalt in Romeo and Juliet can be seen as an evil character, but does it make someone evil if they play Tybalt?" To get an outside perspective of someone who had merely played the game for fun, I interviewed Michael Thompson, who is currently a pitcher at Cazenovia College. He spoke of how the game seemed relatively calm, with little to no violence, despite the fact that his character was killed off at the end because the D&D group he was playing with was not sure if he would continue playing with their campaign. Mike said of his experience overall, "It was definitely a new environment, but it was a cooler experience than most people make it sound, and I can see why people enjoy playing it." He also noted the social aspect as being one of the highlights of the game.
You can really get people to become a group together. I know of experiences from everything of people just becoming closer friends, all the way to I hear stories of marriages came from didn't even know the people. They decided to come together and play, and they became the closest two people can be.
Cool.
So I think the positive part is that you really get to meet people who are very like-minded.
Each player I interviewed felt that the most positive elements surrounding the game involved the creativity that D&D brought into their lives, and that regardless of whether everyone was a devoted player or not, the game served as a fun way of bringing people together and telling a story. Peter Babergall of the Boston Globe writes of his experience with Dungeons & Dragons as one that provided him with friends and saved him from loneliness. He elaborates on how the game made him a more creative individual, and that his generation of gamers went on to be among the filmmakers, writers, and musicians of today, all because D&D served as a creative outlet where their imagination could grow. Where some people keep their children hidden from the subculture because of stigma or dark associations, Bebergal prepares to teach his son how to enter the mystical subculture that is Dungeons and Dragons, and make new stories of the very world around him.